Evening, I'm Peter Gleeson. This is Sky News across Australia. Tonight on the show, a retired Special Forces commander demands due process for soldiers accused of war crimes. Unprecedented media reforms revealed Parliament to consider legislation to level the playing field. And Fraser Island cover-up as Queensland's opposition questions the handling of a destructive blaze that forced residents to evacuate. But first up tonight, is integrity dead in politics? That's the question legitimately being asked right now around the country, especially in the big three states. I talk of New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland. The more disturbing question is, do voters really care? They should. Integrity and not being corrupt should be the cornerstone of our Westminster system, but voters don't punish poor behaviour. In fact, let's have a look at some of the governments with appalling integrity issues in Australia over recent years, and they've actually increased their majority at the ballot box. Debt doesn't matter, we know that, nor does being naughty. Now in Victoria, Daniel Andrews won in a landslide at the last election, despite senior cabinet ministers being caught out in the so-called red shirt scandal, where it was proven that taxpayer money was used to hire electorate officers whose sole role was to work on the election campaign. Quite extraordinary, but big tick for Chairman Dan. In New South Wales, Premier Gladys Berejiklian's office has been exposed as careless at best, but likely worse, after shredding documents relating to community grants which clearly favoured the LNP. Now that came after the Premier herself showed poor judgment in her relationship with dodgy Darryl Maguire. Well, now in Queensland, after Premier Annastacia Palasazczuk lost her Chief of Staff David Barbagello and her Deputy Premier Jackie Trad to Crime and Corruption Commission investigations, another scandal, big scandal too. This time she's been caught out after receiving an email on her private account from none other than old Mango Cube himself, Transport Minister Mark Bailey. Now, Bailey was heavily criticised for using his own private email, it was called Mango Cube, to talk about government business, and he received an almighty uppercut from the CCC. That was back in 2017. Well, now it appears he sent an email to the Premier on that very same account, but back in 2015. Now, she's not denied that the email is inauthentic. So the question now arises is, did she reply? Did she actually conduct government business on a private email account, which is a no-no? And if she did, she's in clear breach of her own ministerial protocols enacted after the original CCC probe. Now, if that's the case, well, the CCC will probably want to have another look at what's gone on between her and Minister Bailey. Bailey, of course, Mark Bailey, was warning Premier Annastacia Palasazczuk about the ideological beliefs of a prospective Director-General. Now, the Director-Generals are the guys that run the departments. Why he would be doing that, warning the Premier about anything in relation to their ideology, is anybody's guess. So here's the question. Has Australians become so numbed to this sort of behaviour among our politicians that they don't really care? That's the question. It's a legitimate question. If it doesn't affect a voter's hip pocket, just like debt, it's clear they don't really care. Have we become a nation that accepts integrity mediocrity? If so, we're no better than the Russians, we're no better than the Chinese, we're no better than the North Koreans, we're no better than the Iranians. How sad it is that Australians now accept this sort of behaviour as par for the course. We should hang our heads in shame.